This is actually very different to the video that I thought I would be making today, because I thought I would be sitting down talking about the good points of Diablo 4, the less good points of Diablo 4, and what they perhaps need to change. Well, what is actually different now is they're implementing a bunch of changes. Some are going to be done before Season 1, some for Season 1, and some for Season 2. We've also had a clarification on what a seasonal character means and how they are essential to the new Battle Pass. And really, the thing that's important here is, yes, Diablo 4, because it's got a campaign that at least has a start and an end that are very, very, very compelling. It's one of those games that's going to make a good impression initially, but what happens over time? Will people drop away? I saw as an example Force, who you'll probably know from YouTube, a tweet just about, oh yeah, a lot of my friends list has moved off the game. Now, Blizzard themselves have clarified that actually the vast majority of players haven't even finished the campaign yet, which does kind of show that those of us in this internet sphere maybe are a little bit more ahead of the curve than we think. With that said, I'm going to talk about the good and the bad, what's changing, and what the future is going to hold for this game. As for the good and the bad, ultimately, because of the new changes they've announced, I've just decided to stop playing until they are in. As much as the endgame stuff was partially fun for me, parts of it felt fundamentally broken. So, to get into it then, what is bad? Well, I would say the Renown 4 and 5 grind, especially the final bit of Renown, which just involves you going around all the zones, where the density of the world no longer feels like exploration and you bumping into things. It feels like you checking things off to fill the Renown bar so you can get those Paragon board points. That doesn't necessarily feel good. And then with the open world, whenever you're doing the campaign, you're traveling around, the open world is cool, you're exploring, you're finding new things. There are, however, times where the open world rather feels like just a slow menu. Thankfully, that is something that they are also improving. Then there is just a small problem where the endgame made no sense, and that is because Nightmare Dungeons were basically, they didn't make sense to run. They were not the thing that you would level characters up with, and even right now, that is still the case. The Tree of Whispers, which pretty much gives you your bounty-like challenges to do, it also didn't give that much XP, even when you're doing its objectives, and the likes of course, the Hell Tides, they're not really a thing for experience anyway, even though, yes, I did end up quite enjoying the Hell Tides as something to do in an open world, static open world Diablo game. Also some quality of life things. Rerolling on your gear, very expensive. Inventory space, very frustrating sometimes. And the horse, because when there's nothing in its way, that horse control's fine. When you need to do anything precise, that horse can be a nightmare. Things like the horse depends on where your mouse cursor is in terms of its speed, which a lot of people don't find to be particularly intuitive. Now, even with that, there is plenty of good. The gameplay, the tone, execution, all of that, very strong. This incarnation of Sanctuary is one that I really do want to spend time in. And for me, the other good thing is itemization and buildcraft. Building my character has been fun, and the way that the itemization works, I'm actually finding myself caring. So, yes, there are legendary imprints that you unlock by just doing the dungeons, but those will always be at their lowest roll. Whereas the legendary effects that actually drop in gear, those, they're going to be rolling anywhere within their range. So you're then extracting those effects from legendaries, and essentially it is using some of that gear as if it's a currency. I think that works quite well when, done in tandem with actually fishing for good itemized, well itemized drops. I basically think that that's worked quite well. Going through the Paragon board, I've been surprised how much I actually enjoy that too. So overall, I've thought that this has been a stellar basis to build from, but that fundamentally hitting level 100 in the Eternal Realm has been something I've had absolutely no interest in, because the way that you've ended up doing that is just grinding normal dungeons. Basically, the community would find normal dungeons where either doing the whole thing or a segment of the dungeon would, you would just do it. Then you would teleport out, log out of the game, log back in again to reset the dungeon, go in again, and you would just repeat, grind these dungeons for the places where there's a higher density of elites. And it was just a boring XP grind. It was totally mind-numbing, because the Nightmare dungeons, where, you're sort of ascending the tiers of difficulty, those just did not make sense to do from an XP perspective. Blizzard then started nerfing all of the regular dungeons in the game, actually nerfing the spawn rates of elites. That just made the game feel less fun. So overall, the endgame was just kind of grinding to a halt. especially because, like, after level 50, leveling is slow. After level 70, leveling is extremely slow. And to people, this just felt, honestly, shit. It did. And then there was even more problems. You know that renown grind? You'd have to do that again in your alts. Blizzard actually did intend for their seasonal content to involve doing renown again, which is so much work. Absolutely, it would not have been fun. And that had a lot of people thinking about the future of the game and thinking like, I enjoy Buildcraft, I enjoy doing content, but I am not doing that mind-numbing renown grind again. And that is where we've got to go to the latest changes that have been announced for Diablo 4, because credit to them, they're actually tackling the most important problems. All right, first, big fixes before Season 1. Number 1, they've actually heard what players have said about the renown grind. And here's how it's going to be working. Map portions that you've discovered in the Eternal Realm are going to carry forward into your next seasons, and the same is going to apply to the Altars of Lilith, where, like, the Altars of Lilith effects, those obviously will still be there, and you will get the renown automatically. So that is absolutely fantastic. For dungeons, they've said that the time for nerfs is ending, the time for buffs is coming, but I'm fairly sure that they want to do that in a way that doesn't just have people going back to the same old thing of grinding mind-numbing dungeons. And that's the next thing that they have announced. This was all in basically a developer chat. Nightmare dungeons are going to reward more XP. That is the thing that is big, because it fundamentally means that progressing your character in that endgame context, that it's actually, you know, you're going to be doing that via what basically is the heart of the endgame, which is doing nightmare dungeons with sigils of higher and higher and higher tiers that have got more affixes, you know, stronger modifiers on the mobs, that kind of thing. I suppose all eventually to get you to Uber Lilith. Then there's even more good stuff. So your sigils will now act as fast travel items to the target dungeon. So one of the things that wasn't really great is you get a sigil, you'd activate it, and then you have to go to the dungeon. Previously, you would just go into your Greater Rift, do it, go out, go in again if you wanted to. Well, here it was just do your dungeon, use a sigil to go to the next dungeon, go to the nearest waypoint, get in your horse that sometimes feels terrible to control, especially when you just want to go through mobs and get to where you're going, and then you have to run to the damn thing. So this big open world then became basically a slow menu. And that did not feel satisfying to players. So you can just use a new sigil at the end of your dungeon and you'll be taken straight into your next dungeon. And that means you can just repeatedly play and you don't have that annoying break in pace. And they also confirmed that sacred and ancestral gear does drop like more commonly in those nightmare dungeons. I suppose if the nightmare dungeons have got more XP, then it'll be worth it in terms of XP, and it will be worth it in terms of the gear, which will mean it'll just be a sensible way to be playing the game. And they have said that right now a large client patch is actually planned. They've got 13 pages of patch notes and some additional performance fixes too. So all of that is basically really, really good. But beyond that, there are important things coming for Season 1 and Season 2. Then for Season 1, there's some Druid gear stuff that they're fixing, and they're increasing the, basically increasing the material limit, so that's good. For Season 2 then, they're adding in Scrolls of Escape. This is a thing for hardcore characters where if you disconnect, it'll just take you back to town and protect your character. That said, just even the way that someone can have a disconnect and lose their seasonal hardcore character at like level 80 or whatever, I do think that that's basically completely disgusting and insane. Also for Season 2, they'll be making resistances actually be stronger, more desirable in higher world tiers, and gems will be added to the material tab, which is great because, man, it is so damn annoying to feel like your bag space is so hampered by gems, right? You're just having to town portal out to get rid of stuff so often. So that's the change that they have announced. And by the way, a large percentage of the people who watch this channel are not subscribed, so if you actually want to know about the news whenever it's happening, instead of whenever the algorithm randomly tells you, hit that bell, hit the subscribe button, and when you hit the bell, do click all notifications. It truly does help. Since I've actually started mentioning this in a few of our videos, the amount of subscribers we get has like quadrupled per video. It's insane. I mean, not our sub count, but versus baseline, it's a humongous change. So I really do appreciate it. It does work. Go click the button. Let's continue. We should talk about what the hell this season is, why you do sort of have to play one, and many of you may even own the Battle Pass already, and if that's a good thing. So, Paul Tassi is a writer for Forbes. He said, "I did not do previous gen Diablo seasons, so I don't fully get it. If I don't want to level season-specific characters from scratch, can I still use my permanent ones to progress the battle pass? No, and I'm not doing it. Long-term goal is to get everyone to 100 and wait for expansions, I guess." Though, yeah, I get the battle pass new aspect too. Rod, help me, tags Rod. Rod then said, "Yes, to take part in the seasonal questlines, mechanics, season journey, and battle pass, you will need to create a new seasonal character. Playing campaign with seasonal character, if you desire or need to finish, will also progress the season journey and battle pass." Now, this is an interesting thing. This is something that action RPG players are very used to. Though, one of the direct comments under this is, "Then there's no way this is going to fly for most of the player base. Hope you've got a plan B ready for when your MAUs drop 90%. And I think that's basically what Mike is saying there. And the only reason why I bring it up is because a lot of people are going to think about Diablo 4 and they're going to see how it's been MMOified quite a bit more. Taking a character to level 100 truly does take a lot of time in this game, in the Eternal Realm. Now, it is the case that the Battle Pass will contain, the free Battle Pass that is, that everybody has, will contain XP boosts, so that'll probably help you out. But still, I think the point stands. For a large number of people, I would say, myself included, this is not really the way that we play games. This is something that the more hardcore and more niche genre-specific action RPG community is used to doing, right? Whereas for most, I think something that is a little bit more like Lost Ark, where it is almost in, well, literally is in an MMO format, that perhaps is what people would have wanted. And that really cuts to the heart of it. Diablo 4 is trying to get this humongous audience, right? This humongous audience. It's really trying to expand itself too, with its enhanced storytelling, better portrayed characters. They're trying to make this be a game that speaks to so many more people. I think, though, that for the vast majority of that new audience, what they're actually trying to sell in terms of the seasons is just not what that audience is going to want or participate in. Do I think that they will have a bit of a sting for that? Yes. Do I think that this will be a surprising thing for many people who are maybe more casual fans of Diablo or are picking it up because they're part of a newer wave of people that's joining this game? Yeah, I actually don't think that they will intuit that whatsoever. So again, I personally just have to wonder, if Blizzard Entertainment have been trying to make a D4 that speaks to so many more people than older Diablo games, does it make sense to keep the core RPG seasonal model? Or does it maybe make sense to go more in the direction of pseudo MMORPG? I know the latter is something I'd be more interested in, but certainly not something that I think the core ARPG player base would be as used to. Now, if you want to actually understand what's going on in these seasons, number one, you don't need to do the campaign again. I believe you can do the campaign within a season if you want, but you do not have to. There is a new seasonal storyline. The seasonal storyline won't be pushing forward the A plot of Sanctuary. That's something that Blizzard will be doing in the expansions. In addition to that, there's a seasonal journey that is broken down into chapters, and it's basically just a list of things to do, and there, of course, will be new seasonal mechanics as well. And to get a little bit of an idea of this, let's take a look at Diablo 3. Now, I bring up Diablo 3 because obviously this is just not monetized. This is just the continuing, it's a D3, it'll go on forever. Well, it won't now the D4 is out. But it does give us something to look at because it has the model of having a theme for a season, some cosmetic rewards for a season, a seasonal journey to do, and some mechanics. So Season 28 is the most recent one. And of course, it's got some rewards, which, you do some sort of major things, you'll get those rewards. As for the seasonal content, though. So to take a look at the Season 28 mechanic, it's basically this. In Rites of Sanctuary, we are traveling deep into the mysterious ruins of the Festering Woods. Citizens hailing from New Tristram stumbled across an ominous altar carved from an archaic material bearing cryptic markings, and this is a mechanic called the Altar of Rites. The way that it works is that by consuming materials, you progress through this altar. And you can see the way that that works. You have to basically supply materials for an offering, and each node will give you something. So here's an example. Seal A, your kill streak timer duration and reward bonus are doubled. D, 200 damage. G, increased damage against elites by 15%. One of them here is 20% damage. Another one here, progress orbs from Nephilim and Greater Rifts are automatically picked up within 60 yards, which I'm sure would feel quite good. Remember, Nephilim Rifts was more of a time trial thing where you really wanted to pick those things up pretty quick. So that is a new mechanic put atop the season. To then look at season 27, which was called Light's Calling and had this sort of light-themed sort of situation, and what it basically added in was angelic crucibles and sanctified items that can only be acquired in seasonal play, where basically they can drop anywhere at level 70. You can find loads of them, but you can only equip one of them at a time. And again, with all of this stuff, it's designed to tie into, quite naturally, the buildcraft systems of the game. So then when we look at Diablo 4 and we see what its seasonal journey is, basically it's split up into chapters, right? So we can see some objectives here. Achieve level 20. Craft a magic item, interact with the jeweler and craft a gem, complete 7 dungeons. That's all fairly easy stuff. And if you complete 9 out of 11 objectives, you will earn the chapter rewards and unlock the next chapter. So these essentially are goals and challenges that will guide you through the thing, and you can see that there's a mixture here of chapters and events. These will all give you progress towards the battle pass, and as you move through that battle pass, obviously, you'll earn yourself some cosmetics, depending on what version of the battle pass you have purchased. And of course then we can expect some form of new seasonal mechanic that will perhaps define and change how we play the game, what parts of the game we focus on, and how we build our characters. That'll be different. And there will be some story as well. Again, not pushing forward the A plot, but if they can tie this in with story content that's actually good, then that'll be a thumbs up. I don't want little 10-minute chunks of story. Like, if this is going to be a sort of a monetized live service, I want story. I want actual content, not just the systems. Because ultimately, if it just comes down to grinding nightmare dungeons to get to level 100 on another character with a different build every season for a year, well, maybe that's not going to be something that I'll be particularly into. That being said, though, I do have to wonder if Blizzard have a bit of an interesting strategy here where they know that these ARPG seasonal players exist. So maybe what they want to do is just get that battle pass money out of those seasonal players. But they also know there's a bunch of people who will just play the campaign, fool around for a bit, maybe hit max level, then stop, and then come back for the next expansion. I imagine they'll be doing an expansion every 1 to 2 years. If that's the case, then, well, lots of people into the game. So even if this whole seasonal thing doesn't work for a lot of the more casual people who are just not into playing that way, they just want to play their character, they're not interested in build crafting, having one of every class, trying out a new build, a new direction in every season, they're still going to be able to get people via those big expansions. So overall, it's really, if I was doing things from scratch, I would probably try to go pseudo MMO, a little bit more like Destiny, to be honest. That's probably the way that I would go. As for what they're doing here, it does make sense, given that it is sticking to the trappings of its own genre. So overall, the endgame of Diablo 4 then, I think it was deeply flawed at the start. The tree just didn't make the most sense to do. The Hell Tides also didn't make the most sense to do because really you were wanting to get XP to be leveled up, right? Because, you're trying to get towards that item, that eye level cap of like 850, I believe. So you would just be doing those dungeons, and that was not fun. The other ways of getting XP also didn't feel particularly fun, and the way the renown grind was presented, it could get really long in the teeth towards the end. So a lot of this for the seasonal play, I think, has been solved. For me personally, I would need progress in seasonal play to be way faster if I'm going to go anywhere near it, because just the whole, grind for 40 hours, 50 hours to get to, from level 50 to get to like level 100, that is too damn long for me, because a lot of that also is people grinding efficiently with friends, where you can go into a dungeon with 3 other people, and because it's a dungeon, you get XP from anything killed in the dungeon, regardless of range, so you and 3 people can just turbo farm the XP in dungeons. Like, I'm not going to do that. It's not the way that I play the game. So they absolutely need that progress to feel way faster. In the way that Reaper of Souls came out, and Reaper of Souls suddenly felt super speedy, super engaging, super fun, it needs to be more like that for the seasonal content for it to pick up my interest, because certainly the amount of time that goes into leveling a character in D4, that is not something I'm going to be doing every quarter of a year. I would rather it is super, super damn fast. And the point is that it's more about buildcraft, more unique items, that kind of thing. So overall, that's my opinion. I think that if progress is fast enough, it'll be a big thumbs up. However, I think that if this ends up feeling way too slow, and the new mechanics don't really push things forward enough, then I think it'll be a bit of a slump. I mean, Diablo 3 being a bit lighter in that is kind of okay when you think about its monetization, but with the monetization they've got here in terms of the battle pass and all the things in the rotating store, to me that absolutely says, right, there bloody well better be plenty of content in order to justify that. Because if there isn't, we'll kind of be pissed. Okay, so that's it for me. Let me know what you think anyway, and yeah, I'll see you next time.